What does it mean to detach? Should you get rid of focus on your manifestations if you are living as the individualized expression of the all that is? Should you stop trying if you know that you have already everything that can be? Detachment crash course today on the Ministry of Assumption Absolute, brought to you by and courtesy of the Electric Temple. My name is Lucian Francois.mateo St. James. I'm an identity alchemist and your self-sovereignty mentor. Thank you for tuning in. Ministry transmissions are intended to provide commentary on living in harmony, in alignment with awareness of the divine infinite intelligence that is the essence of all that we are, of course, with us being individualized expressions of that. So detachment crash course today is what we're doing here in the ministry. Let's get into it. We're going to start with a quote from, I've never heard anybody else say his name, so Deepak Chopra, perhaps. The ego, however, is not who you really are. So if we're going to talk about detachment, we have to talk about attachment. We have to. So the ego, however, is not who you really are. The ego is the self-image. It is your social mask. It is the role you are playing. So think about that as your avatar, as your 3D, as your character. Your social mask thrives on approval. It wants control, and it is sustained by power because it lives in fear. So the ego, and write that down, the ego, however, is not who you really are. The ego is the self-image. It is your social mask. It is the role you are playing. Your social mask thrives on approval. It wants control. It is sustained by power because it lives in fear. The ego is always, because it is made as a construction of external components of what we believe to perceive, it is always looking out there for more to affirm itself, because the ego, I mean, then if we're talking about it almost as like a kind of metaphysical entity, I mean, it knows it is not the total and the all, yet it is always seeking to verify its absolute. And that's why this channel is called the Ministry of Assumption Absolute, because if we break that down, the word ministry means service, assumption being your understanding of I am awareness, what you assign to yourself with certainty, what you assign to the world with certainty, and absolute being that the assumptions that you assign to your world will be the absolute of your experience. They are not the absolute of all that is. Everything is happening all at once in parallel realities. Creation is finished, everything is happening. However, it is your assumptions that then put a linear focus on that which you perceive to be the limits of what's true in your reality. So that's why we're called the Ministry of Assumption Absolute. We're talking about servicing the self. We're talking about, how can I learn to be in service of myself? Because most of us have inherited assumptions that are not in service to the self, that are in service to poverty, to scarcity, to some type of bondage, to a system, to an institution, to a family coagulation. Many people are enslaved to their families. Many people believe that I must be responsible for the people around me at all points in time. Otherwise, I am nothing. That's the ego speaking. So in the ministry, we talk about how to be of service to the self, how to unbecome those limits of the external inheritances and come into alignment. I mean, that's why I don't even like the terminology, to come into alignment, but to realize alignment, to embody alignment, to be alignment with the divine within. And given the fact that we live this dual nature of an individualized expression of the all that is and separated 3D meat suit ego character avatar, that's going to be a balance every moment that we practice. It is not something, it's not this perfect state that you fall into and then you never have to do anything again. That is going to be the continual awareness of how am I expressing myself as source through the limitation of a body, of an awareness, of a meat suit. So the ego is always seeking to affirm itself. So the ego, here's the thing, if we're talking about should I give up on my manifestations? What does it mean to be attached? Should I let go? If I don't have what I want, should I just be okay with that? Is that the same thing as being attached? The ego is the only one asking those questions, because the ego is the only one that thinks in terms of separation. So it's first realizing when you're having all these thoughts spinning, who's speaking? You have to realize that if we're talking about lack, if we're talking about limitation, if we're talking about fear, if we're talking about time, we're talking about the ego. And the ego is not bad, but your ego is probably preconditioned and programmed to live and act and understand, and probably has these habitual paradigms that are causing you to act against yourself because it's clinging to safety. And I was talking to someone that, I mean, really truly outright said, the bigger things get, the more eyes you have on you, the more things expand, the more that you're responsible for. And like, that's scary. Absolutely. So when you realize that I am the creator of everything that I experience, I am the origin point of all of my experiences, that then means that, yes, you are assuming a state of ultimate responsibility. That doesn't mean you're shaming yourself. It doesn't mean you're blaming yourself, but it does mean that you're taking authority over how you experience this world. So we're no longer blaming the president. We're no longer blaming your parents. We're no longer blaming your friends. We're not blaming anybody because they're just a reflection of you, should you choose to embody that understanding of self. So the ego is the only one. The ego is the only one even asking, why don't I have it yet? Where is it? This is how much time it took, because the ego exists in separation. And we'll talk about why the ego is downstream from the all that is. So looking at this, and this is a conceptualization, right? So I'm not saying this is the end all be all. This is just one version of it. So I got this. Okay. You got source. You got the all. You got the all it is. Everything. Infinite intelligence, consciousness. It can't be named, it's shapeless, formless, can't even be referred to, but is the essence of all things. And everything here is made of the same stuff. And that's expressed in all these different directions. It's me, it's you. We have co-created this moment here together. I'm just a version of you come to help you remember these things because you already know them. Like, again, creation is finished. There's nothing new. I'm not telling you anything new. I'm just helping you remember. You allowed me. I thank you for allowing me into your world to help you to remember. But this is the everything. This is the all of everything. It's the squirrels, it's the trees, it's the birds, it's your phone, it's you, it's me, it's everything. And it's expressed out in all these different ways because you are the manifestation. You're only ever going to get more of what you already have. You will see what you are certain of because you are an individualized expression. You are God experiencing itself through and as you. Through and as you. God wanted to know more of God's self. When we talk about God, source creation, I'm talking about an angry man in the sky. So you're an individualized expression of that. That individualized expression then, okay. Let's see, does this marker still work? Okay. That individualized expression then materializes into a meat suit. That is your body. You are the frequency of that individualized expression. You are what that individualized awareness of source consciousness looks like embodied. There's a 1 in 4 trillionth chance that you would even be born. If you look at that statistically. So you are the expression of that individualized awareness of source made embodied. Your ethnicity, your gender, all of that. That's an expression of that individualized awareness that came from source. And in that meat suit, we have this brain, we have this mind. Now, the mind is not the brain. There's lots of debates, talking about the science of consciousness as to what the mind is, but and I could change this tomorrow, but this is my current conceptualization of it, that the mind is just the perceptual capacity that we have of physical reality. So the mind, I wouldn't say it's the creative space, but I would say that it's the reception and perceptive sight of experience. So we have to have a mind in order to experience physical reality. And that mind then, you could say it's local. That's the, because if you look at like Bernardo Kastrup and some of the stuff that he has to say, he's like an ex-CERN scientist. is the mind located in the body? No, maybe not. But then there's some Gnostic teachings that say that we're we're at the mercy of entities outside of us, and that what we're perceiving has really nothing to do with us, but we really live more as these types of antennas. So what is the mind? That's an ongoing debate within myself, for myself. Multiple different there's multiple different philosophies as to what the mind is. So that not really being my point one, because that takes this a bit deeper. If we're just talking about detachment, it takes us a lot deeper than it needs to go. And quite literally, I'm not the expert on what a mind is. What is the mind? But currently, the way that I would describe it, based on what I am aware of, is the perceptive capacity of physical reality, that we cannot, without the, at least the idea of a mind, or I think of like a mind as kind of like a transmitter, or maybe something that, maybe kind of something like a radio antenna that picks up phenomena around it. That's how I would think of it. Like, the antenna is not the source site of that phenomenon. Like, if we think about radio waves, it just picks it up. It just picks it up and then formulates that into some level of coherence relative to the receiver box relative to the receiver capacities of that radio. And different radios, like I got a restored 8-track down there. That's gonna have a different receptive capacity than maybe like a brand new digital radio in a brand new car, but they do the same thing. So that's how I understand a mind for right now. But I'm comfortable with that right now. Perceptive capacity of physical reality. Rupert Spears said something that helped me a lot understand the mind. So here's what we got here. The universe is what the activity of consciousness looks like from a localized point of view. So this was a direct quote from him. If the universe is what the activity of consciousness looks like from a localized point of view, then an individual body is what the activity of a finite mind looks like from a localized point of view. So when I look at you, I see a body, but when you close your eyes and go inside, you don't experience yourself as a body. You experience yourself as a mind, a bundle of thinking, feeling, sensing, perceiving, plus all of the subconscious layers beneath that. When I look at the bundle of mind, I see a body, because I see your mind through my perceiving faculties. So I love that. I absolutely love how direct and how open-ended that is. So, talking about the mind. But out of that, gosh, is this not working? Okay. Out of that, we construct the idea of a separate self. Once we incarnate into this meat suit and we have this perceptive capacity of mind, we are viewing the world at that point in time. I forget how long it is exactly. It takes a baby to understand that the baby is not the things around it. Like, the baby's not the mother. And, because I actually, like, when we're born, we actually, like, believe that we are, and I read this in Mother Hunger by Kelly McDaniel, we actually believe that we are the same thing. We believe that we are the same thing as the things that we are seeing. It's actually like a certain amount of months before a baby understands that it is separate from the mother and that it is separate from its environment. So isn't that interesting? We're born with an idea of oneness with everything around us. But to live in this meat suit and to have an understanding of a separate self that comes as an expression of that individualized awareness that is a product of infinite source consciousness and intelligence, we have to develop a sense of self. If we don't have to, we are forced to, I would say. We are given a name. Again, you're taught that you're a certain ethnicity. You're taught that the people in your geography might act a certain way. They might have certain preferences for sports teams. They might eat certain foods. They might talk a certain way, and that certain way will be different than people that live in another geographical region. I mean, as soon as we become aware of our separation, start understanding ourselves by these labels and by these boxes and by these assignments, and again, most importantly, by our inheritances. And those inheritances can go beyond this current lifetime, obviously, or at least the way that I understand things in terms of past lives and different things, because it's all happening at once. But you start understanding yourself by these labels. You start understanding yourself by, this is my name, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at, this is what my parents taught me about love, about money, about relationships, about friendliness, about deeds, about work, about ethics, about morality, about morality and religion. I don't know what I was trying to combine the two. About religion, about God, about what I'm allowed to think about myself relative to the world around me. So we develop this mask, and it's who you think that you are. And again, this mask is not what you want. Is to what we're talking about here is developing an understanding of mask that is in harmony with knowledge. And it really isn't just like, I don't mean knowledge in terms of conceptual understanding. I mean knowing that comes from the place of stillness within, that all of this is downstream from infinite source consciousness, which means it's a product of that. It's not like, no matter how many layers we add onto this, every single layer is a part of the whole, and in every single layer is the whole. So, we get a meat suit. That meat suit is a product expression of source consciousness. It appears to be separate from it, and that appearance is by way of the mind, but it's not. It's not its own entity that came from nowhere. It's not coming from its own space. So by the time that we get to the mask of the ego, that social mask that thrives on approval, if we can get that in alignment, not get it, that's the wrong, because it talks about like a doing and a forcing and an efforting. But if we come into self-knowledge, if we come to a point of stillness within where we realize that this ego is still a product of source consciousness, then you can see yourself as an embodied expression of that. You can understand that there's an appearance of separation, but that appearance is not the total, is not the truth. That's just the illusion that we're living in. But we believe, without this understanding, without this conceptual awareness, we then believe that this is everything, that this mask is everything, that everything we see, everything we believe our political assignments, you get into politics, and everybody's right, right? Everybody thinks that they have the one necessary truth that eradicates all other perspectives of possibility. Talking about this candidate or that candidate, this party or that party. Those are just external understandings of assignment. They have nothing to do with the truth. They have nothing to do with the all that is. They're not inherently good. They're not inherently bad. They just are. Is one sports team better than the other? I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on, if you're talking about statistics, but they just are. Like, so to assign that to yourself, to decide like, we use the external to affirm what we want to believe about ourselves. So like, I'm going to wear a sports team because if I align myself with that sports team, that makes me feel like a winner or like a loser. So if my sports team is winning or losing, then I feel like a winner or a loser, or I'm feeling good or I'm feeling bad. And all of that is external noise attaching to an idea of self, which is already an external construction of things outside of you, and allowing that to control, this is what's true in my reality. There's nothing, like, we can't detach from the outside world and just like, I mean, some people do, but just like sit on a mountain and be removed from everything. This is not about the external world being bad or evil, but it is recognizing that it is an expression of a limit. It is an expression of, it is a limited form, just like this body, it is a limited form expression of a particular frequency. It's not the all that is. So whatever you're seeing in your 3D reality is not the all that is. Whether your circumstances are positive or neutral or negative, you are the one, by way of your individualized awareness in a meat suit through a mind, you're the one even categorizing it as such. But it's all one thing. None of it is separate from the other thing. So we think that these agreements, like if we get brought up and we're taught, you're a loser, or we could get brought up and we're taught that you're a winner, whatever it is, we tend to believe that this mask, that this ego, that whatever it is that we believe, that that's the case. So then that's the total case. So then what we're here doing is, how can I start assuming, this is not about the ego being bad, this is not about the external world being bad. But how can I start assigning to myself if this ego is not the total, is not the all, if the external truth of reality is really no truth at all, but is really just an expression of perceived limits, if that's then the case, then how can I start assigning more generous limits to myself? And knowing that that's the case because I'm in a one-to-one relationship with everything around me, although it does not seem that way. Although through perceptive capacity, by way of my senses, it might seem as though I'm separate from the things that I'm seeing. But if I have the conceptual awareness that I am not separate from the things that I desire, from the best of my life and from the worst of my life, and that I'm actually the space of origin, if I'm actually the energetic space of origin of all of my experiences, then how can I design a better origin point within myself, for myself? Because if I design a more harmonious origin point, what am I in harmony with? Am I in harmony with stress, with lack, with scarcity, with poverty, with I don't get what I want? I'm separated from the things that I want because I'm looking at time, because I'm looking at where is it, because I'm checking for it, because I don't believe I'm worthy for it. Am I living in the relativity of that external like that external construction of the world? Do I believe that that's the truth and I'm assigning that truth to myself? Is that the mask that I'm wearing and I'm looking for the outside to prove to me something that I don't necessarily believe for myself? Because that's what a lot of people are doing, where when you start off on this quote unquote manifestation journey, when you're always manifesting, the number one thing I'm always saying in the ministry is that you are always manifesting. You're always manifesting. You are a manifestation. So nobody needs to teach you to manifest. We're talking about how to direct attention. We're talking about how to develop a state that ego, develop a self-concept, to develop a state that is conducive with an origin of experiences that you actually want to have. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about how to manifest, because you know how to manifest. Every negative thing that's ever happened to you is a manifestation of you, which sucks to hear, but that's not to blame you. That's to show you the power, like how powerful of an origin point that you are. Anything that you've seen, you were in a one-to-one relationship with by your state and by way of your assumptions, by way of, I always say, and I think I said it before, that, what you're certain of is what you'll see. And what we're certain of are the things that this ego allows us to believe. So when you start believing new things, you are going to get some pushback from the old script or that old state of self, because manifestation is instant. Materialization takes what appears to be time. It's not necessarily a matter of time. I would say that it is a matter of persistent awareness, but because the only time that's ever happening is now. So I would say it's a matter of persistent awareness. I would say it's a matter of density and awareness and in density of knowing. But it is not a matter of time. But then the minute that you're focused on time, that 3D ego is then focused on, why don't I have it now? Because it needs the approval. It needs, like, okay, I'm thinking these things about myself. Why don't I see it? Because it's existing in a lens of separation. It's not operating in the space of origin. Like, I already am the love that I seek. I already am the wealth that I seek. I already am the romance that I seek. I already am the safety that I seek. I'm the origin point of all of these things. Again, knowing that in conceptual awareness, and then coming to embody that truth by sitting in stillness, by coming to know the kingdom within, which, there's a million different tricks and techniques, but that's something that you just have to come into contact with yourself to know, this is me. This is me. I am source. It appears as though I'm separate, but I am source. So anytime I start entertaining notions of separation from the external because I'm feeling like I don't have what I want, who has determined that? Who is doing that feeling? That is the 3D. That is the ego. That is the mask existing in separation, because the 3D ego mask can only affirm what it already knows. And for the most of us, unless you grew up in positive circumstances, that's fear, lack, and scarcity. I mean, that's what's going on in the news. That's what they're, you pull up your phone, social media, fear, lack, and scarcity. I mean, that's a lot of what predominates this 3D matrix reality that we're living in. So what we're doing is creating a new understanding of self, because we can't get rid of a concept of self, or at least I don't believe you can. Not while you're in a meat suit. You can't get rid of the idea that you are a person. But what are you thinking about that person that is experiencing the world in this 3D matrix? Are you thinking that they don't get what they want? And the minute that, again, you change your understanding of self, you change that manifestation, that point of origin that, I am someone that experiences love and abundance on a regular basis. If you're looking for external validation of that immediately, you've stepped out of the wholeness of infinite intelligence that is all things, and that's the ego then scanning. So over time, and I think it can be through repetition. I do think it is through repetition because that's how humans learn. I'm not saying that you have to practice a specific technique over and over and over again in order to earn your manifestations. But what I am talking about is aligning yourself with a state of mind where your ego is not battling against your new concept of self, or your ego is not looking for it and striving and efforting and trying to decide, okay, well, when am I going to get it? Because that's the ego still existing in a state of separation. So you want your ego to be in alignment with the wholeness of that which you desire, in alignment with the wholeness of that which you declare, knowing that it is here now. And again, that's not something, at least I don't believe, that's not something that's going to happen just like that immediately, especially if you have a lot of negative momentum of a lot of lack and scarcity mindsets that have told you, I'm not somebody who gets what I want. And I'm speaking from experience here. So the manifestation absolutely is instant, but that ego, that 3D, that I'm looking for the validation, I'm looking for the external knowledge that I'm allowed to believe this thing for me. You have to recognize when that's speaking and say, no, you're not the creator. You are not the creator. You are the downstream product of the all that is. You're not the creator. So if I'm looking through your lenses and trying to figure out when am I going to get it, when is it going to happen, I've already stepped out. I've already stepped out of wholeness and into separation. I am all of it. So to get the ego on board with, it's already here, it's already all of it, I am that person. If the ego pushes back and it's like, no, but then where is it? You recognize that's not the voice of source speaking. I'm not even going to listen to that. You're irrelevant. You're not irrelevant. Like, we have to exist. We have to coexist here in this body, this understanding of self and the knowledge of wholeness, of divine intelligence, of source consciousness within. But I'm not going to listen to you tell me that I should doubt, that I should fear, that I'm looking out there for it, because that's exactly the voice that's going to keep me separate from it. It's already here. We're already there. I need you to listen to me. I need you. You're talking to ego. I need you to tap in. And you repeat this process, and not because you have to repeat it. I'm not saying you have to do anything, but that voice of separation is going to be loud when you start declaring new things about yourself, because it is holding on to what it knows. And through that mask, then, which we've kind of talked about this, the mask being who you think you are, your agreements, your inheritances. We want to assign agreements and labels to ourselves that are conducive to the wish fulfilled. And I'm not really even talking about stuff, but that understanding of wholeness within, of being the space of origin of all that is good and bountiful and lovely and pleasurable. But whatever that mask and that ego assigns to itself, or has been assigned to it, again, for most of us, we're dealing with in the realm of, God damn it, this red is not wanting to agree with me. That's what we are going to see in the world. I mean, and I have many examples of this. I've been working in the field of mental wellness for 7 years, and I have individuals that make remarkable progress in a short amount of time working with me. Yet I'll ask them, people that are dealing with explosive anger, or people that are dealing with chronic anxiety, and will work on a certain curriculum or go through a certain series of practices. And, that's really, dealing more in the realm of, frameworks and different things. But, frameworks can be effective. And 6 months down the road, 5 months down the road, I'll ask them, how they're doing. And they'll say, I'm so stressed, or I'm so angry. Yet they'll tell me a series of experiences that they had. They'll handle them wonderfully. They'll allow themselves to feel their emotions. They'll, work the frameworks we've talked through. They'll feel it through. They'll problem solve. They'll let go of what they can't control, and they move through it and regulate themselves throughout the experience. Yet they tell me, I've been so angry, I've been so anxious. And I'm like, well, doesn't sound like, it sounds like, one of the things that I see is most common is actually, as I assist people to, make improvements in their mental landscape, one of the hardest things for them to see is actually that those improvements are happening because their ego has taught them that this label, not the ego's taught them, because the ego is just, a product of, again, what we believe and what we've inherited and what our assumptions are. So, but the ego is so used to identifying as someone who struggles with anger or someone who struggles with anxiety that even as they make improvements, and this is what I'm talking about with your appearance of the world, depending on how you see the world is going to depend on these agreements and labels and assignments or the assumptions that you have. These are individuals who will make remarkable progress and still label themselves as an angry person or still label themselves as an anxious person. They'll still see the world regardless of the fact that they're, managing things, problem solving, getting along, emotionally regulating. They'll still see themselves. Their perception of the world their appearance of the world will still be, I'm an anxious person. I'm falling apart, because they've got an identity that I'm always falling apart. So, we'll work the program, do the things, do the skills, do the frameworks, do the methodologies. They'll make progress. They'll be doing great. I mean, that's the number one thing I see. I'm like, that it's almost hard for them to give themselves credit for how well and how far they've come in such a short amount of time, simply because they're used to seeing the world that way. They're used to seeing themselves as somebody who blows up at everything. They're used to seeing themselves as someone who can't handle anything and is having panic attacks at every minor inconvenience. So then once we start working frameworks that allow them to experience life outside of that understanding of self, they might be doing different things, but they still haven't really realigned their identity to see the world through the eyes of somebody that essentially can handle things. So it doesn't really matter. So it's easy to talk about, okay, if you're thinking bad shit, you're going to experience bad shit. But I mean, I see all the time people that really truly make remarkable changes in their lives, but they won't assign those changes to themselves because they don't believe this ego, that these assignments that they have, that they again inherited usually, because they haven't broken down those identity assignments to self. They're still perceiving the world as like, oh God, everything's falling apart, even when I'm like, okay, well, what's falling apart? Tell me what's falling apart. You're falling apart. Doesn't sound like you're falling apart. Doesn't sound like you handled it. I mean, life's not perfect, obviously, all the time, but it sounds like there was a challenge. It sounds like you managed it. It sounds like you regulated. And it sounds like, what used to be, maybe a week of ruminating on this particular challenge, you didn't pay it any more mind past the point in time that you had to actually, engage in whatever the problem was, and you moved on. So like, why are you still saying you're an angry person? So it's your perspective of the world. The way that you see yourself, you are only ever seeing yourself. If you see anger in other people all the time, you either are in an incredibly victimized, well, I mean, these are really the same thing. You're either in an incredibly victimized state, or you're an angry person yourself. But I mean, like, those two things end up being the same thing. This is shadow work. Everything that you hate, Jung talks about this. Everything that you hate about everybody else is you seeing the aspects of yourself that you detach from yourself, that you no longer have conscious awareness of, that are sitting in that shadow, but you wouldn't be able to observe it if it wasn't of you. You are in a one-to-one relationship with everything to do with you. Everything that you see is a product of your assignments, is a product of your awareness. So again, what we're talking about here is not how to manifest, it's how to align your awareness, how to be a point of origin that allows you to experience peace, abundance, love, prosperity, clarity, joy, and not be a point of origin for fear, lack, despair, poverty, anxiety, fear, everything's bad all the time, nothing's not getting, like, if that's our point of origin, then like that's what we're going to see. And it doesn't matter what domain you're talking about finances, you're talking about relationships, you're talking about your relationship with yourself. So that ego, then that understanding, so we're talking about self-concept, that social mask, well, you want to have an understanding of self that allows you to access that divine within, that understands that what we see on the external and thoughts of fear and of lack and of separation, that is just the ego's only mechanism for perceiving itself in this world. But it is not at all the all. This will actually be the wrap up, the quick part. So when you're attached to something, you are attached to the outcome, to the idea of separation, the ego is the only one that can get attached, because the ego is the only one concerned with where is it. The ego is the only one, that social mask, that mask of self, is the only one concerned with why don't I have what I want? Because unless I have what I want, I can't validate to myself that I'm allowed to feel any particular way, because the ego needs safety, the ego needs certainty, and the ego needs comfort. And those are human needs as well. Again, these are not bad things, but you have to understand that, like, you're living this dual nature as a separated self that has an ego and has a concept of how it sees itself relative to the world, and that within you are that ego then is a product of the divine, of the all, of everything that can be, and you're living in the in-between space of that. So, I mean, we're obviously not the all that is, because if we were the all that is, I mean, in formless shapelessness, we wouldn't be in this meat suit body. We're individualized expressions of that. That individualized expression, then living in separation, is a separated idea of itself, but that separation is not true. So you have to be conscious of when the ego is speaking. The ego is fixated on the outcome, because the ego does not have the capacity to understand it is the source of the things that it's seeing. It's looking out there. The ego is, I talk about a self being an idea of an experience, that there is no self. The ego is validated and it is constructed by all of the things that have happened to you as evidence as to who I'm allowed to believe that I am. So the ego is the only one concerned with where is it. And the ego then, at the same time, is not concerned with the things that it knows that it can be certain of. So again, this is why we want to become certain of new things. We're working in tandem. We're working in collaboration with the ego. We're not saying get rid of it, because you can't get rid of it. Like, you cannot get rid of an idea of a separate self. You can't get rid of that. You can come to understand it from a broader perspective, but you can't get rid of it. So the ego then, I'm not attached to if this glass of water is here or not. I'm not saying I can't wait to hold this glass of water, because I'm already holding it. I'm already certain of that. My ego can allow me to agree to that, because that's just what's happening. So when you're asking, where is it? When am I going to get it? That's you speaking from a place of lack. That's you speaking from a place of separation. There's a famous quote from Buddha, and I have a different kind of interpretation of it than maybe some of the, the more traditional religious understandings of what this means. But, attachment and desire are the root of all suffering. So the way that I interpret attachment is separation. The way that I interpret desire is longing. So not that it's bad to have desires. I mean, I think that you were a desire of the world. I mean, you were born of Eros. You were born of two people that had some desire for each other at some point in time, which I know that can be tricky given different situations. But, but we're born of this expression for God to know God's self. So desire is not bad, but where we get into trouble is when we recognize, Neville Goddard talks about the fact that the moment that you conceive of a desire is the moment that it's fulfilled. That the desire is the fulfillment itself. That once you become aware of a desire, that is your individualized awareness of source consciousness saying, it's here, because you became aware of it, because your receiver of mind picked it up, which means it's here. But the ego has a very hard time conceptualizing that, because it's looking, the ego is made of the outside, and it's looking for the outside to tell it who it is. So to be attached is to be fixated on an external outcome, is to be looking for validation and for a sense of safety in the fact that I'm allowed to receive this thing because it came to me. But here's the thing. The trick is that you're only ever going to get more of what you have. So if what you have is lack of a particular desired experience, what you're going to get is more of that lack of that particular desired of experience. You're not going to get more, like if you're looking for it, if you're not living as the point of origin of all of your experiences, as God expressed, then what you're going to get more of is that sense of looking for it. That's what's going to come to you. Because again, the manifestation is happening now. The materialization takes what appears to be time, but what really takes is persistent awareness of the reception of such. So it's all about, in short, in being it now. If you are attached to an outcome, what you're saying is that I'm fearful that it won't come. So I'm doing techniques. I'm hiring coaches. I'm reading books. I'm doing to get. I talk about doing to get. I'm not saying don't ever take aligned action. I'm saying that oftentimes our actions will come from a place of I don't have what I want. So then those actions then only affirm more of I don't have what I want. So to be attached to something is to say, I fear it leaving me. I fear it never coming for me. Okay, well then, Lucian, then what? So I'm just supposed to just not care about my desires? Here's the thing, is that to detach is to have. It's not that you don't care about it, but you live in the space of that reception. You understand that it is already of me. And this is why I don't talk a lot about very specific things. It is really just because of my life experiences. As my life experiences, change and vary, I'll have different things to say. I know that. But, a lot of the specific things I've wanted have come from that place of lack. And once I've let go, I've experienced a greater abundance or a much greater vision of whatever the essence of that thing was, but it didn't come to me the way that I expected it that it would, because I was attached to the particular expression of a particular thing at a particular point in time. So again, I guess I would say, I'm not much for particularities. I talk about essences, to be the origin of the essence of love. Ram Dass says, I'm not interested in being a lover. I'm only interested in being love. And then when you're love, well, I'm sure love will find you. It has no choice. Reality has no choice. If we look at, the downstream awareness of this, has no choice but to reflect the contents of this individualized awareness. It has no choice but to express that, because that's all that we're ever seeing. The individualized awareness is that expression of a localized God from a localized point. But what's in your localization? Or another thing that I like to say is that the internal substance, your internal substance will manifest in your world as external reality. So to be attached to something is to say, I'm not in harmony with it. It's over here and I'm over here and I'm attached to this idea, because if I let it go, I won't have it. If I let it drift from my awareness, if I'm not always fixated on how I'm going to get it and what I'm going to do and what needs to happen. So again, there's a lot of fear there. So then what you're saying then is like, what's charging? What is in the substance of that which I desire? It's fear. I'm trying to manifest a specific outcome and I'm always focused on it and trying to figure out what I need to do, because I fear if I'm not always doing something or always fixing myself or always reading some book or always doing something, that I'm not going to get what I want, that I'm already affirming that I don't have what I want, which means I'm going to get more of what I don't want. So attachment is about fixation and dependency on a specific outcome needing to be validated by way of external reality. You don't need to, you're not dependent, like I'm not dependent on this glass being right here for me to know that, for instance, if it's in my cabinet, it's not still here. I'm not every moment wondering where the glass is simply because it's not in my sight. I just know that it's here. So to be detached from it is to understand that I already have it. It's already here. To be detached from, if I'm going to get the outcome of my desire, is to know that it's already here. So the detachment then is knowing that you are the outcome. All you're ever seeing is yourself. If you feel like you're in lack or in separation of the things that you desire and you're doing things to get them, and you could be doing the manifestation things, you could be doing the scripting, you could be doing the journaling, you could be doing the listening to robotic affirmations. I love robotic affirmations, but I think that they allow us access to a state. If you're listening to the robotic affirmations in order to get something, what you're saying is that I don't have it. So it's all about, it's all about being the space of origin. It's all about having it now. There's nothing out there that's going to validate to you who you are. You are the validation of that which you see. It's never going to come to you out there before it comes to you in here, which means that, you have to be comfortable with knowing, and I talk about it this way too, that you really truly are your own Messiah. All of us, because it's a romantic vision. All of us are waiting to be saved in a way, or we're waiting for someone to see us, to recognize us, to pick us up out of the rut and tell us that it's going to be okay and that we're loved and that we're special. And that it's okay to just like live just life. Like it's just okay. Like we're all waiting. We're all waiting for that. But it's you. But it's you. And should you have that experience with someone else, it will be because you gave it to yourself. And not that you gave it to yourself once, but because you live there. I mean, I remember, I've told this story in a different way. All my life, I wanted friends growing up because I didn't have friends. Felt like, loser and outcast, all these negative terms. And then when I finally got them, I was so at peace with myself, I didn't need them. And then I was like, damn, like having a social life really kind of takes away from my solitude. It wasn't because I decided to stop giving up friends. It's just because I decided to start being my own friend. And then as I was my own friend, I started seeing that. Or, I've had a myriad of positive and negative experiences through my life. And each one of them I can trace back to my state of awareness and my inheritances. When I first got into radio, I always wanted to do radio. I never really had like any intentions to do it professionally, but always had a desire. And once I saw an opportunity that opened up, I got into radio, and I'd been listening to so much radio all my life and just really knew like really good radio formatting, and I knew really good radio programming. And my very first radio show, and I worked in radio unprofessionally 2 years, and then professionally, meaning I just unpaid for 2 years, and then professionally 3 years. And it never once occurred to me that I would be a bad radio host. It never once occurred to me that people wouldn't want to hear what I had to say. It never once occurred to me that my music was weird or strange or off, even when I did get into, some like really indie experimental things. And it was probably like at the end of my first year radio, and this was unpaid, because I wasn't even concerned about stats, or I wasn't even concerned about, well, how's it doing, or do people like it, or whatever it was. But, at the end of my first year, and again, this is just unprofessional, radio, but college radio, but I had the number one show at my station, and I had no idea. And it wasn't because I was manifesting, I am a really good radio host. I wasn't attached to the outcome. That didn't mean that I didn't care if the show was good. It didn't mean that I didn't show up to do radio. It didn't mean that I let anything go. I just lived in a one-to-one relationship with, I have a really fucking cool radio show. I know radio. I've been listening to radio. So this is, what I was assigning to my ego based on my labels and assignments to myself. And I was doing this totally unconsciously. I had no idea. I'm saying I could just look back at my life and see like when I manifested really good shit and when I manifested really negative shit, and kind of, retroactively kind of apply the frameworks that I've learned in the last 3 years and be like, oh, that's how that happened. I was in a one-to-one relationship with, I have a fucking amazing radio show. I didn't know who was listening. I didn't know how many viewers we had. I didn't know what it was doing for the station. Really till the end of the year. And I found out I had been really successful with the way that I had, outlined everything. And that wasn't because I was manifesting a good radio show. I wasn't attached. I wasn't attached to that outcome because there was no fear that it would be bad. I wasn't affirming it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. I just knew that it was good because I'm good, because I know music, because I know music history. I've been studying music history all my life. That's all that was happening. I felt like I learned from some of the best in the industry just by being so, such a dedicated listener, and that I was going to bring all of that to the audience through my show. And that was it. So I was detached, not because I didn't care, but because I had already allowed myself to become that space of origin of having a good radio show. Or occasionally, after the radio, I got into DJing, and for private parties, and I don't do it much now, but occasionally I try not to. But if a friend, I got one coming up. I got a wedding coming up in June next year, and if a friend asks me to do a radio show, I'll do the radio show. Not the radio show. Gosh, DJing. I was in flow state, so I was kind of talking from nowhere. I'll do the I will do the deep. We'll do the wedding. Gosh, I'll do the wedding. And when I do the weddings, especially some of these new Gen Z, because I don't like, music today. John Waters said once, if you stop listening to new music, you're dead. And I swear I got one foot in the grave, man. This stuff today is not my taste. But when I do a wedding this is a Gen X wedding, so this will be really good for me. But I did a Gen Z wedding recently, and I was a little, I was a little shaken up because I was like, man, this music today is just like, I mean, do people dance to this stuff? Like, what is this? But I just decided that, like, no, I'm a great DJ. I always get great reviews. That's all that's happening. People are going to love it. People are going to dance regardless of what time they have. I'm going to have a good time. A good time comes forth out of me. I facilitate a good time. That's all that's happening. It's all I'll accept. And that was it. That was it. I was not like, they'll like it, they'll like it, they'll like it, they'll like it, they'll like it. I'm not saying that robotic, like, I love robotic affirmations, but I am saying, like, where is the space that you're practicing these techniques from? Because a lot of the times we're practicing a technique, we're focused on what we don't have. We're not being the origin of that experience. And then we're saying that because I'm not the origin of that experience, I need to do something to get it. Which doesn't matter what you do at that point in time, because you're the origin space. The technique doesn't do anything. The external, whatever you're doing on the outside, that doesn't do anything. You're the doing. You are the origin. So, like when I was a little like shaken up about, like, man, these are some really young kids, and this era of music is not my era of music. I don't know what this stuff is. But I was like, everybody's gonna have a good time because that's just what I decide, and I do. And because I'm mostly, as I said, I'll do things for friends, do weddings for friends, but I'm mostly retired. And every time I do a wedding and I'm retired, I get offer after offer after offer. Like, you were so good. Come out to this, come out to that. The venue itself is like, hey, would you like a spot here? Can we get your card? I'm like, I don't have a card because I don't really do this. This is just a favor for a friend. And it's not because I'm manifesting more business. I just know that I'm good at what I do, so I'm not detached in a way where I don't give a fuck if anybody cares, if anybody likes it, because fuck them, I'm good. It's just like, no, it's just like the knowing. You'll see what you're certain of. I just know I'm good at what I do. That capacity. So everybody else is going to enjoy it. And that's all I'm going to allow. Like, that's all I allow in the space of my awareness. I don't allow the space of my awareness to say, I hope they like it. I hope they like it. Oh, God, I hope they like it. Because now I'm attached to an outcome. And that attachment to the outcome would then suggest that I don't believe it's the case. So you sit in the knowing of the outcomes. That's where we'll end here. You are the outcome. You sit in the knowing, in the space of the outcome. Detachment is the same thing as having. So it's like, do I let go of what I want? Why should I let go of what I want? You're not letting go of what you want. You're letting go of the idea that it's not already here, that you don't already have it. So, wrap it up. Ministry of Assumption. Absolutely. Check out the dispatches from the Edge of Obvious podcast and the Liberation Chronicle, which is the written word of this platform. This was a great, I enjoyed filming this. So thank you for co-creating this moment with me. And remember to be good to yourselves and others, because everybody's just a version of you anyway. Until next time.